Good morning, class. Hey, it's Mr. Stewart, and this is week 9 for CRJ 160, Intro to Security. You have this week and the majority of next week, and then it'll be final exam. So basically, we will finish up this course, I believe, next Sunday evening, I believe, is when the due dates are. I'd have to double check that just to make sure, but we're coming up right here on the end of the course. So a couple things to keep in mind. If you've missed any of the weekly article summaries, if you've missed any of the anything else in the course, it's at this time you need to try to get it caught up. And if you have any trouble getting anything submitted, please let me know, and I will be happy to look at it and see and make sure I get it open for you. Research paper is also due by this Sunday, which is the 27th, I believe. I have had a couple questions about the research paper. One is whether or not an abstract is required. Now, the template actually says it may not be required in all classes. For this class, an abstract is required. Let me explain what an abstract is for just a moment. An abstract is simply a 120-word or less summary of what the paper is. So you should have a title page. Page 2 should be an abstract, and starting with page 3, you should have the body of text. Make sure you use in-text citations and references with all of it in proper APA formatting. Now, what I usually tell students to do is do your title page, skip a page, and then start writing your paper. When the paper is written and you got your reference page complete, go back to that page 2 that is blank, and then write the abstract. It's kind of hard to actually write a summary of the paper until the paper is complete. Now, some people can, especially if you know exactly what's going to be in the paper, if you know how it's going to be set up. But it seems to work out better if you write the abstract last. And really, what an abstract is, it's simply a very short summary that if, let's say, your paper became an article. And that way somebody didn't have to read the whole article to see if that's what the information that was in it was what they were looking for. They could read that abstract. It takes 2 minutes, and whether that lets them know whether they need to pull that article and use that article for whatever it is they're looking for or not. And it's good practice. You know, I don't expect you guys to be perfect with it, but I do expect effort. So please get those research papers in, get them in on time. I'll try to have all of the grading caught up between this week and next week, so that you know where you stand in the course going into that final exam. So, with that being said, today I'm going to talk about Chapter 15, which is institutional security. Now, institutional security covers anything that we would consider to be an institution, such as a library, a school, a hospital, things of that nature, museums, art galleries, things like that. Things that are typically open to the public, have a lot of people of diverse backgrounds and different mindsets there. And, you know, it's different to secure institutions than it is what I would consider to be a private manufacturing facility, because you're really dealing more with the public, and you can't be, I hate to really use this word, but you can't quite be as strict. You have to be a little more flexible. You know, a good I guess example that if anybody's ever been to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C., it's really a huge museum. It's multiple buildings. And to go in each one now, you have to go through a security checkpoint, and they make sure you're not bringing certain things in. They make sure that, you know, that it's a safe environment. They're providing a safe environment for people to look at the exhibits that are in that museum. And one of the things that they do is they also, you know, walk around, they patrol to make sure that the patrons are not stealing the exhibits, damaging the exhibits, or, you know, people aren't doing unsafe things, or making sure that generally that the whole environment is safe, and that's the whole idea behind institutional security, is to provide a safe environment for the people who are there to do whatever it is that they came there to do. It's also a really good target because it is considered a target-rich environment. Typically, you have two things. One, you have typically a location with a lot of finances tied up in it. As far as if it's a museum, you got priceless pieces. If it's an art gallery, you got priceless pieces of art or exhibits that could never be replaced, and so you could really cause damage, financial damage, and cultural damage. Honestly, if somebody were to come in and destroy it. But you also have a lot of people there, and when you have a lot of people, you can take a lot of people out. So just understand that it's a target-rich environment, both for the people who are there as well as whatever the contents are. I mean, even on a college campus, you have a lot of money tied up in the building, in the equipment in the buildings, and then you have a lot of people there. I mean, that's why active shooters typically come onto a school, is because it's a target-rich environment. They can take as many people out as they want. I mean, look at a library. Libraries are excellent examples of institutions that need some level of security. You can't just have anybody coming in there doing whatever they want. The interesting part about this whole thing is that our culture is so vastly different than it was, even 30 years ago, when people had respect for institutions. People didn't go to a school and shoot it up. People didn't go to a library and blow it up. People didn't go to a library and even talk loud. It was considered bad manners, and it was just rude, and people just didn't do it. They had enough respect for the institutions that we didn't have to provide a lot of security in those institutions because of the level of respect that the public granted them. And I don't know what's happened in our society, and I guess that would be a question that we could probably talk about in a different class, probably a sociology class, as to why the issues have arisen in our society where we have a lack of respect for institutions. But we do. We've seen that in the last 20 years or so with the school shootings. We've seen mall shootings. We've seen bombs at sporting events. We've seen a general lack of respect for what we used to have respect for in regard to these institutions in our country. So let's talk I'm going to skip some of these slides simply because you can read these slides too, but I'm just going to kind of talk and give you some ideas in regard to institutional security. Libraries. Libraries are important and need to be secured because a lot of them contain special collections, very rare, one-of-a-kind books or items. Some libraries even are almost like a museum. They have more things than just books. They do have some other exhibits that people come to look at that really are interactive, but it's something that you can go there and see. You also have to keep in mind that libraries are filled with paper. Paper is combustible. Libraries are filled with old paper usually, which is even more combustible, and so you have to always be on the guard for fire security to make sure that somebody's not smoking where they don't need to be, or somebody's not doing something that could possibly start a fire that could spread through the whole building. And if you've ever seen a library burn, they go up really quick, and honestly, usually there's not a lot that can be saved because those old books just burn. They also, we don't want people to steal the things. Libraries kind of have two types of books. One is the kind that you can check out and take home and read, and lots of people check it out, and that book will have a lifetime. And if it's a very important book, in many cases, after it's been checked out a few times, they will put it on reserve, and you cannot check it out again, but you can only use it at the library, and that would extend the life of that book. But then there's also books that would never be allowed to be removed from the library because the rarity or the value of it And in those cases, security is necessary to make sure that people don't steal it. If you've seen the movie National Treasure: Book of Secrets, I'm not going to comment on the validity of whether or not a Book of Secrets exists, but if you look at the security measures in which the book was kept, and it was never intended to be removed from that location, then you see the need for security there. So you do need security people to supervise the library. And there are certain things you can do, such as providing copy equipment so that people don't have the need or desire to steal the book. Basically, it keeps honest people honest. If somebody really wants to go in there and steal something, they'll probably figure out a way to do it anyway. But if you have good, tight security, that it makes it even that much more difficult. Museums and art galleries. A lot of times, we're really concerned with theft here, vandalism and arson. We've heard cases where people go into a museum, they don't like an exhibit, so they will come in and deface the exhibit. There was one, and I can't remember exactly where the museum was or what the exhibit was, but some lady was kind of psychotic, and she came in and she was throwing blood and urine on a priceless piece of artwork because she didn't agree with what the piece of artwork was representing, and so she actually destroyed it. She was arrested, and of course she had a fine and she had restitution, but in many of these cases, some of these pieces of artwork may be destroyed, and you can never get them back if once they are destroyed. You've got a couple conflicts in regard to museums. Is that you've got certain employees that work their dead level best to preserve the items, and you've got other employees who want to take those preserved items and let everybody see them because they want to share them with the world. And because of that, you may have people that come in and see something that they want. They will try to take it. If they can't take it, maybe they don't like it and they want to destroy it. So we've seen cases where museums have been burned down, art galleries have been burned down, or the pieces or exhibits have been vandalized, or somebody just steals it because on the black market some of these pieces of art can bring a lot of money. The Nazis just before and during World War II actually went in and actually stole a lot of very priceless works of art who were done by very famous artists prior to that time, in order to sell them to finance the Nazi war machine. And so then you had other people who were actually trying to steal those pieces of art first to keep the Nazis from getting them, because they were afraid that they would never be allowed, or put anywhere for public viewing ever again. So, we didn't really think up until that point that we needed any security in art museums, but you do. And if you go to an art museum, you'll see somebody who's probably employed as a security person there just to do these things that we've talked about. Religious facilities, and these are really interesting. Now, we're really talking about is churches. And if we're not talking about churches, we're talking about some sort of church-ran mission or something like that. Some of these facilities are open 24 hours a day. They actually reach out for the worst in society, because that's the Great Commission. If you're Christian, is that we should help all of those who cannot help themselves. And when you do attract all of those people who may not be honest, they may not be fine, upstanding citizens, then some of them do think about ways in which they can defraud the church, or steal from the church. It is a high-profile target for enemies of the church as well. Think about this right now. The radical Muslims are attacking Christian churches in different parts of the world, and not only are they killing the Christians, but they are destroying their churches. And sometimes there's even battles taking place inside churches and religious facilities and orphanages and things like that, Here in this country, we don't hear a lot about that, although in Knoxville, Tennessee, several years ago, during a Sunday church service, there was a gunman came in and opened fire in a church service. And because of that, the American Society for Industrial Security actually now has a course you can take for house of worship security, so that especially some of the big churches, and we have them right here in Huntsville, where they actually have plainclothes armed security professionals in the church when services are going on. They're paid employees of the church, and they are there to secure the facility to make sure that nobody does anything they're not supposed to. So churches are attractive targets. They are often high-profile targets, and because of that, you do have to provide a level of protection. You can use CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, if you're building a church, to make sure that it's less attractive, or you make it more difficult for people to go there and steal things from. Although there's a lot of churches which are, old buildings, the locks aren't great. There's equipment in there. There's musical instruments, some electronic equipment, a safe with maybe the weekly offering, depending on the kind of church. Maybe there's wine, maybe there's silver in there, for the in regard to the furnishings of the church, and so a lot of times they're out in the middle of the country, especially here in the South. You see a lot of churches that are just located out in the middle of nowhere, and that's a very attractive target. And unfortunately, you have to do things to try to secure church buildings now, which, again, that's one of those issues where 30, 40 years ago, people had enough respect that they wouldn't have broke into a church, unless it was to stay warm and just survive. They would never steal or hurt anybody in a church building, even if they weren't a Christian. So you can use adequate lighting, you can safeguard the valuables, and you can have a plan to deal with people who may become disruptive or disorderly in the church. Banks. Many people don't necessarily consider a bank an institution, but we do call them financial institutions, and because of that, they are also a very attractive target. Almost every bank around has somebody who's responsible for security, and many banks have uniformed security officers who are armed. Some of them simply have unarmed people who are just there to slip out and call 911 if the situation arises. It just depends on the location that the bank and the mindset of the administration of the bank as to how they feel like that facility needs to be secured. The interesting part is that banks are targeted not only from outside, they're also targeted from inside, from employees. Maybe an employee steals from the bank, and that's called embezzlement, or people will come in and try to defraud the bank. Checks may be stolen and written on accounts and such. So, those are some of the threats to some of those financial institutions. And we also see that because banking has gone online, we now are hearing all of these cases where some bank, I think Citibank, had a problem with their internet security not too long ago. Some of the retailers have had problems with internet security that allowed some of the criminals to gain access to personal identification and financial information for people, and if they get your bank account number, they can probably drain your bank account. So we're also having to try to protect some of these financial institutions from an information security perspective as well. Some of the most frequent losses for financial institutions are simply theft and embezzlement and fraud. ATMs are also robbed fairly frequently. In many cases now, what we're seeing people do is they just steal the whole machine. They'll tie a truck to it, pull it off its mounting bracket, take something, load that big heavy piece of machinery in it, and take off with it, and then break into it at an alternate location. I mean, the ATMs have money. Honestly, I don't know how much money an ATM would have in it at any given time. Typically, they're loaded with money every couple days from the bank, but depends on the traffic and how many people are actually coming to the ATM. An interesting idea you see some gas stations do. They'll have an ATM and you'll run your card through the ATM kiosk, and it'll print you a receipt, and you'll take the receipt to the clerk, and the clerk will actually give you the money. So the ATM actually doesn't have any money in it. It's simply a computer terminal that links up to your bank in order to make a withdrawal. That's probably a very secure way to do it. Only problem is that typically they're located in stores that I like to call stop and robs. Anyway, because people are going to come in and rob those stores, and of course they're going to get the same money. But the ATM itself, I guess, would be considered secure. Security measures for financial institutions designate a head of security, a security officer. If you are the victim of a robbery or embezzlement or fraud, the FBI is the go-to agency for that. That is their specialty. Maintain bait money or die pack money, that if somebody does come in and rob you, you can put that in. At least it will help identify and maybe recover the money at some point. Don't let the tellers have an excess buildup of cash, and make sure you're cognizant of security when you're opening and closing. That typically maybe two people are there when you open, so that one person can watch while one person is trying to get the door open. We've seen many cases where banks have been robbed before they even opened because somebody got there early and they were overpowered or whatever going through the door, and they went in and made them open up everything, give them whatever they could get, and then they left before the bank was ever open. Hospitals are also a unique place because you have people there who are sick physically. You have people in hospitals who are emotionally ill, and you have people who aren't sick but are emotionally raw. Maybe they got bad news, maybe a family member just passed, and so and you have people there from such diverse backgrounds and locations, including staff and visitors, that it's 800-pound elephant in the room when you try to secure a hospital. I have a friend of mine who is a regional manager for a security company that used to have the contract for the Huntsville hospital system, and I know it was a nightmare for him trying to maintain security, because there's so many things that can happen. There's so many things that a security officer could do that could get them or the company, the hospital, sued. Because a lot of times hospitals have violent people sometimes, especially people that get brought into the emergency room who are overdosing or high on drugs or alcohol. They've turned violent, and they may have to be taken, gotten under control. And because of that, the hospitals just are a unique location to secure. They are open 24/7. You have a lot of people there. It's a target-rich environment. You have some people there who are unable to remove themselves under their own power. You have drugs there, very potent drugs. You have lots of flammable gas like oxygen, explosive gas like oxygen, nitrogen, things like that, hydrogen, that are used in medical processes. And so what you have is you have a whole lot of different types of targets that makes it a very unique place to secure. You also have information that must be protected. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, called HIPAA, basically says that medical information is now protected information, and some people want to get other people's medical information. Honestly, I don't know why, but you will see some people that want it, and because of that, they will come in and try to steal it, so the information has to be secure. The only thing we can really say is that each hospital has to be taken almost on an individual basis and recognize the risks, the specific risks that are in your facility. Make sure you control the inventory, you control access, you try to prevent fire. In the event that the building must be evacuated, have a plan in place and a procedure that you've tried and you know it works. And typically we also have surveillance of the premises, that if something does happen, we will have footage of it that we can go back and we can give to the police for prosecution. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I think you can figure out, and you look at this PowerPoint, what are the important parts of a hospital, and what are all of the kind of the working and moving parts that really would require security. Nursing homes, very similar to that as well. You do have a special population in nursing homes. Typically, it's either a very physically disabled young person or an elderly person who does not have the ability to remove themselves in an emergency situation, or even to fight back, or even some of them don't even have the ability to report if they've been victimized. So you have to keep those people in the facility while keeping the people the undesirables out of the facility. And you also sometimes hire employees, unfortunately, who are bad employees. There was a couple serial killer women up in Michigan several years ago. They both worked. They happened to be lesbian. They both worked in a nursing home, and they decided they wanted to see what it felt like to kill people. So they would smother to death these elderly people that could not fight back, and they killed several of them before they got caught. So you just have to understand and look at institutions and figure out what the specific issues are related to those institutions, and then come up with policy, procedure, and plans, and practice them all so that facility is security. Same way with school. Schools are a big one, and I could probably teach a semester-long course on school safety and how to prevent student violence. And it's hard. Schools used to be a very safe place. If you had anything happen to a school, it was typically a vandalism or a theft. Somebody took something the school had, or somebody vandalized the school in some shape, form, or fashion. Now you have to be concerned with the safety of students, the safety of staff, a staff member, a student, or even the family of a staff member or student bringing a weapon in, shooting people up. I mean, if you look at Virginia Tech, if you look at Columbine, you look at West Paducah, Kentucky, Pearl, Mississippi, Jonesboro, Arkansas, those are just several of the school shootings. Educational facilities have issues with. University of Colorado had somebody get stabbed not too long ago. I think so did Delaware. You had community college in Arizona that Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was at when she got shot by a disgruntled citizen. So violence is very real in our school systems at this point. You'll notice I didn't say Sandy Hook and all of that, because there's actually some legitimate information out there that says that that was a hoax, that Sandy Hook didn't happen, that nobody actually died there. So you can look that up on your own. You can go to YouTube and Google and check out the Sandy Hook hoax idea. So at this point, the jury's still out on that for me, so I'm not going to comment on it. But I mean, we've had enough educational facility incidents in the last 20 years to really know that this is an issue. This slide gives us the main security concerns of those educational facilities, such as safety of students and staff, violence, vandalism, theft, and burglary. Security measures will vary depending upon what the type of school it is, the size of the school. Typically you don't have as much violence in a school with younger children as you do with older children. So that makes high schools and colleges much more prolific in the amount of violence that they have. One of the things that you need to do in all cases is control access, so that just don't let anybody walk into the school. And if they do come in, you want to make sure that they're not armed. Many schools make everybody go through a metal detector or get patted down before they come into the school. Some of the safety measures you can take in schools, again, access control, proper lighting in the nighttime, make sure you have security people present and they are accessible. We've gone to school resource officers in many cases in the last several years, in a lot of secondary schools, and in post-secondary schools, even like Calhoun, we have our own police department. We have commissioned, certified, sworn, real police officers on all of our campuses, 24 hours a day, and that is that we actually have a force that can respond if we have an emergency, and they are armed. So, and they have arrest capabilities and investigation capabilities. So, we do have security personnel. Many colleges don't. I taught for 5 years in Colorado at a school that when I first started there, they had security. Security only worked in the nighttime, and it was a residential 2-year school. We had probably 3,000 students, and we had right at 1,000 on campus at any given time in the nighttime who were living in the dorms, and they had 2 security guards for the nighttime. We had a budget crisis hit, and they laid them off. We didn't have any security. Now, we were in town. The city police could come, but we didn't have anybody on site. No one. So that actually made that school very open and vulnerable to something. Luckily, knock on wood, nothing happened. Colleges and universities, by their nature, they're open. That's the thing. It's hard to control access to colleges and universities because they want to be known as open and accessible to the public. So therefore, that presents even a more unique challenge that typically you don't have to go through a metal detector. You don't have to go through a gate guard to get to a college or university. So it reduces the effectiveness of access control. That's why it's important that you do maintain proper key control. Only those people who should be in an area have a key to get into their area. If you have a key that fits social sciences as a faculty member, it shouldn't fit the fine arts building. It shouldn't fit the science building. It shouldn't fit the math building. It should only fit where you are supposed to be, and that's one way that we secure those historically open facilities. Many schools have made changes in the last several years as far as colleges and universities to follow the CPTED principles, more lighting, cutting back trees and bushes and overgrowth on the campus to allow for greater visibility so that the criminals wouldn't have anywhere to hide, so to speak. We're involving students in crime prevention and teaching them proper security and safety, because safety is everyone's and security is everyone's responsibility. We all have a role in order to protect, secure ourselves and secure whatever our area is. And then we've just been raising awareness, basically, of all the things that could happen. We've taken steps here at Calhoun to increase awareness and train faculty and give students some insight on what to do in case we have an emergency situation. Again, improved lighting, use of security personnel, use of technology, and information technology security IT security is also important in colleges and universities. That people may try to hack in and redirect maybe a student loan funding or something like that to a different account, and in order to get some reward or something like that. So it is definitely a unique type of facility. All of what I've said this morning is simply to get you to think about these institutions and what some of the special issues are with them. Please read this chapter in your textbook. Please look at the PowerPoint. I also implore you to maybe do extra research. Google or YouTube have videos out there on security for different types of institutions. You can look at that. There's websites out there that specialize in institutional security, so look at those as well. All right. Next week we will have a integrity video, and that will be the last one. Please make sure that you get your papers submitted by the end of this week, I believe, and or it's the 27th, whatever day the 27th is. If you have questions, reach out. If you need help, reach out. I'm here. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, guys.